Kimi Antonelli holds a 20-point lead going into this weekend's Canadian Grand Prix at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal. And there's a chance of rain on Saturday, and there's a chance of rain maybe on Sunday as well. And I'm so excited, Delucia, because it feels like all of a sudden the season's starting again. Because I'm like, where's our Formula One beat? And now it's back.
And I can't believe it because it's only race 5. We're only on race 5, Sasha, and I feel like it's been forever between each Grand Prix. And finally, I feel like we can kind of get into a new rhythm, into some momentum, because so far the season has been pretty intense, lots of changes in and out of the track. But also, I feel like with someone like Kimi Antonelli going into Canada, let's remember this time last year, it was his very first podium when he got 3rd at the Canadian Grand Prix. And now look where he is, 3 straight wins in a row. This kid is just performing on a whole different level. He's got the momentum behind him. I'm really excited to see if he can continue that because it's also a sprint weekend. And it's the first time we're doing a sprint in Canada. And we know from the past, since it's been on the calendar, Canada is not an easy track. Low downforce, always weather dependent. There's a lot that we're going to maybe expect from something like Mercedes to bring more upgrades. McLaren's also bringing the second half of their package. So I feel like maybe this is, like we said, the start of the actual Formula One season. And then things will really get underway with, the rest of the championship.
Yeah, and I think you bring up 2 very important points there. Number 1, Mercedes, and number 2, McLaren. I think these are the 2 teams that are going to be the ones to watch out for this coming weekend. However, with the slight changes that they made in the technical regulations before Miami, which now carry on into Canada, team like Red Bull with Max Verstappen and teams like Ferrari with Lewis and with Charles Leclerc, qualifying is going to be so important, because I don't believe that either the Red Bull or the Ferrari can chase McLaren or Mercedes. But if they're in front of them, I think they've got a little bit of a chance. But I'm anticipating a Mercedes versus McLaren battle this weekend, and you just got to hope the 2 McLarens don't crash into each other like they did last year.
I mean, I think last year was the culmination of the papaya rules and what we all predicted would happen the year prior. And I think that was also the race that I think for me changed the course of the championships and how McLaren went about racing, because thereafter papaya rules just dissipated. It vanished into thin air and we saw a real title battle between the 2 of them, and then Max Verstappen joining later on in the season. But I am on the same page as you in terms of where everyone is. I think Red Bull can be quite dangerous with Max Verstappen. We saw it in the last race out in Miami, how brilliant he is at defensive driving, but also taking the gap when it is there. I will also say that if you look at Charles Leclerc, it was so heartbreaking how it ended last time out in Miami, and so disappointing for all of us. I can only imagine how Charles Leclerc is thinking, well, this is my opportunity to redeem myself, because Ferrari still haven't gotten a win in almost 2 years now. And if there is any person who I think can do it, it is him. And Lewis has also a great track record at Canada. If he's able to not race by himself like he did the last time out, and they can be competitive with the other 2 teams, I have a good feeling that maybe it'll be a mixed podium again, because Ferrari is so quick. But I don't know what is going on in terms of strategy, in terms of just driving the car too hard, making silly mistakes. It's a lot of different things that has kind of brought them to a situation where you should have at least gotten a podium, multiple podiums, at this point. But yeah, I think McLaren's going to be on the hunt this weekend, and they are going to go after that Mercedes, both for Kimi and for George.
No, for sure. And I think there's this lovely inter-team battle between George and Kimi now brewing, where George, of course, wants to stamp his authority as being the team leader, and, Kimi now having 3 in a row. There's going to be a wonderful battle between these 2 guys this coming weekend. I've also decided that I'm very superstitious when it comes to Formula One. I have no superstitions in the world, but with Formula One, I think I'm the bad luck. If I wear anything red on a Sunday, and I've got tons of Ferrari merchandise, But if I wear anything red on a Sunday, I feel that I bring them bad luck. So I'm ensuring that this coming Sunday, there will be no red anywhere near me. And we'll see if it makes a difference. If it makes a difference, then clearly I'm the good or bad luck charm. But we'll have to wait and see. Okay, now the $1 million question is: will Adrian Newey be in Canada? Now, just prior to the Miami Grand Prix, unfortunately, he fell ill, and saw some pictures of him in hospital. And we just wish all of the best to Adrian Newey. As the latest that I've got is that he's recovering at home, but whether or not he's going to be at the Canadian Grand Prix, I'm not entirely sure. We'll find out over the course of the weekend. The other thing is that if Honda have managed to do something with that engine. We know how Adrian Newey works, and even in this lack of downforce era that we've just gone into compared to what we had 3 or 4 years ago, we know how Adrian Newey designs cars. And if that Honda engine is just marginally better, they could all of a sudden be scrapping it out with the Alpines of the world, the Haases of the world. And I don't say that flippantly. I genuinely believe that. Don't discount Adrian Newey. I think we know that where their problems are. But if that engine is okay-ish, they could spring a big surprise this weekend in the sense of where they have been for the last 5 races.
I love your optimism, Sash, because I think in comparison to everyone else, we know that they are nearing the back of the grid with the likes of Cadillac, for example. I think they are the team that has the most opportunities to improve from where they're sitting, because they have the resources and the intelligence on their team to bring them back into the fight. But I think that where Alpine is, which is crazy to say in comparison to where they were last year, I think that Alpine are in such a cushy position for the first time in years, where I feel both Franco and Pierre Gasly can score points quite easily. And I think especially at a track like Canada, it does require a lot of technical precision from the drivers. And I think because it's also a change from Miami, with how they race there, I think this might also suit them a bit more than, say, the likes of Aston Martin. If Adrian Newey is able to come back and really immerse himself in this. Maybe it was the stress that also made him quite ill, because, we know that how tumultuous that organization is as well. If he can just take a moment and, regroup and try and figure them out, I think that they can battle maybe with the Haas of the world, the racing bulls. But I don't think they're in the same catalog as the Alpines just yet. And that's saying a lot for me personally, because I was not batting an eyelid at them last year. But now I'm looking at them and I'm saying, maybe they'll surprise us at the end of the season and they would have a podium or two, because it's happened before with them. And I feel like they're in a nice position now, if it's a wet weather race, if something dramatic happens, where one of them can be on the podium.
Yeah, it's an interesting time for Aston Martin. LP, now a leaked conversation between all of the team owners and the FIA was leaked over the interwebs the other day, and Zach Brown apparently having a go at the FIA and Formula One for various different reasons. But one of the most important reasons was the fact that no manufacturer should be allowed to own 2 teams. And of course, there's been a debate for many, many years about Red Bull, because you've got Red Bull Racing and you've got Racing Bulls. And their major sponsor, of course, is both Red Bull. However, there are 2 separate companies. Now, whether there's an overflow or whatever, one can only presume that they are being as ethical as possible in terms of shared information. Okay, this is very, very important. And over the 20 odd years that they've been in racing, we haven't had any reason to doubt that from any perspective. The big talk is that with Alpine, we know that Flavio Briatore is a great negotiator, and it's a question of, can they bring Christian Horner in? Is there a potential? And then the big money was, all of a sudden Mercedes are looking to buy the Alpine team. And this is where Zach Brown sat there and said there's no ways that that Mercedes should be allowed to buy into Alpine or buy a share into Alpine, because it means that they have 2 teams. And I firmly agree with that, because from there, of course, you can always use the one as a dummy runner, and of course, let them do as they please. Now, we know in the game of Formula One, or in any form of team racing, if you have one team that is leading and you have your secondary team that is holding them up, you can always go there and say, listen, get out of the way and let our guys go and race. And that has happened, of course, over the years in Formula One. If you're an engine supplier, as Ferrari is to Haas, and let's say they're going for the championship and Ollie Beerman's in front of Lewis Hamilton for the championship, they will go there and say, listen, if you want Ferrari engines, get your guy out of the way. That can happen. But that's not owning two teams. That's just a gentleman's agreement between team principals. So Zak Brown, I think, has got some merit in what he's saying, that there shouldn't be this allowance of a manufacturer owning two teams. But it's created a massive stir amongst all of the other team managers, team owners, about how Zak Brown also perceives the future of Formula One going, where he believes in going forward with technology, and others are saying, let's go back to internal combustion engines. But he doesn't actually make any engines. So it's quite an interesting topic.
I think it's always going to be debatable in what way, in which direction a sport like Formula One is going to go, because you have to include the sustainability element of it. You have to include the technology aspect of everything. But to what extent do we do that? And that's always been the case, because we've never not been against having electrical components in a car. It's just how much of that can we have so it doesn't take away from the authenticity of what racing is at the end of the day. In this situation, Red Bull has had a second team for more than a decade. And we've seen it before. I remember in Singapore, Daniel Ricciardo's last race, when we still had points for fastest lap, he had taken that point away from Lando Norris. And it didn't even matter, because at that point he wasn't in the top 10. But because he'd taken it away from Lando, it really helped Max Verstappen in that battle. And then they ended up taking away points for fastest lap because of that issue. Well, because of that issue. And I think back on all of these situations and helping, like you said, a gentleman's agreement and everything. Do I believe that Mercedes should own a second team on its own? No. But in a way, Red Bull kind of does do that, because it is their headline sponsor. But they are two completely different factories. If Mercedes can own the team but still have Alpine run it, I think those are two very different things. Because now we have two Mercedes teams. I'm confused as a viewer. Now I have to follow, okay, who's this one? Who's that? It's all about managing the business and how it plays out on track. Do I think we should have more manufacturers in there to make it more competitive? Probably. But at the end of the day, I guess the sport has always been run on money. And who's got the most money to buy up the most teams so that they have the most resources to do dummy testing? Because the reason why Red Bull also has a secondary team is so that they can train their drivers. They are in the junior team. So Mercedes has had such a strong junior lineup for so many years, but the only other option is to send them to a team like Williams, which is what they did with George Russell when he first came in. Go and do a couple of years at Williams and then come to Mercedes. You can't just jump in there. With Red Bull, we say, right, you're going to our baby team. You're still going to work with the same engines. You're working with similar people in a similar run business. Then when you're ready, we'll move you up. I think Mercedes is looking for that, instead of having to go through other teams and then back to themselves.
As to, where the junior academies are, Racing Bulls, Toro Rosso, what it was before, yes, brought in the likes of Vettel, the likes of Verstappen, etc., through the ranks up to Red Bull. But then again, Ollie Beerman is a Ferrari driver, but races for Haas, etc. So that's how they work. Speaking of Haas, apparently Ayao Komatsu and Esteban Ocon are not particularly seeing eye to eye at present within that team, and there is even rumor that Ocon could well get the boot if he doesn't up his game in terms of his performances. But I've always liked Ocon. I think he's a fantastically fast driver, but it just shows you how good I think Ollie Beerman is. So the question is if Ocon had to go, who would Ferrari place at Haas?
It's a very good question because my immediate thought is you're going to take somebody who's competing in Formula 2. I don't think that they would take anyone who's currently a driver or somebody who is, out of the market. I think they would take one of their Formula 2 drivers who are in the academy and bring them up and use that as a platform because they've got a few in Formula 2 who are doing ridiculously well so far in the season and they just started. So I think they'd probably replace them with someone else and still nurture Ollie. I do think there's been a really big difference between Ocon's performance versus Bierman's performance. And you and I have said that before. And it's not just been the last 5 races, it's been into the middle of last year from when we were in Europe all the way down to where we are now. So this has been one of the seasons for Ocon where we haven't really seen him perform or wow us on track. We know that he's got the ability to do that, but in comparison to your teammate, which is your closest competitor and your closest rival, I don't really think that they've been in the same WhatsApp group. So I can understand why Ayo Komatsu is saying, you got to step it up, you got to make improvements because there are guys waiting. Maybe even we have someone like Paul Aaron finally making his way into Formula One. That could be a good deal. Maybe we have Jack Doohan come back into the Haas fraternity. We don't know, but I have a feeling it's going to be someone who is young and fresh and ready to go.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Paul Aaron. I've liked this guy for like 3-4 years now. I'm going, someone's got to give this kid a go. Give him a chance because I really think he's something special about that kid. Rumor around at the moment, Lewis Hamilton set to quit Formula One, and I sat there and I went, but look, we got Fernando Alonso, who's like 4 years older or 3 years older than Lewis Hamilton. And I looked at a comparison between Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. Yes, last year, Leclerc had the better of Lewis Hamilton without a doubt. This year, and just in qualifying, not in race, etc., in qualifying, they are less than 100th of a second between each other. And we know that Leclerc is one of the quickest qualifiers. Okay, so that's sort of, let's take the first, it's difficult to compare with this engine disparity along the way. But maybe we see here in Canada, if the two of them are pushing each other the way that they have in Miami, all of a sudden we might see a refreshed Ferrari. We might all of a sudden seeing, hey, hold on a second. There's nothing better than being pushed on by your teammate. It does make you find that extra tenth here, that extra tenth there. And if Hamilton has got the ability to push Leclerc, and Leclerc can even go even faster, I think he's going to pull Hamilton with him. So I see no reason for Lewis Hamilton to, think of retiring right now.
I think Lewis is so happy with where he is and still, enjoying the car. It's just a matter of a series of unfortunate events. I mean, last time out in Miami, that crash that he had in the beginning had nothing to do with him. It was just by chance that had happened. You're an innocent bystander in that situation. If you look at where Shaw and Lewis have been on track in prior races, they've always been behind one another or separated by a car or two. The distance has been so marginal. So I think that Ferrari is still incredibly dangerous. They are fast. And it's just a matter of, are they faster than the Mercedes? Right now, no, but they're still competing with them. And that makes me excited because you're still seeing the likes of McLaren, you're seeing the Max Verstappen's Red Bull, you're seeing the Ferraris still battling in the front. And with that, you kind of hoping to go into Canada with some luck and hopefully to get a sprint win or even a podium. But I have a lot of faith that Lewis is probably going to stay and see out his contract. I mean, anyone would be happy and very lucky to have Lewis in their team. For someone who's so meticulous and such perfectionist, he always wants to be the best. And I don't think that mindset has shifted from when he first started in the sport. So it's good to have two really great teammates battling it out and being really respectful of one another on and off the track. So, I mean, I don't think Lewis is going anywhere anytime soon. And if he does leave, I mean, Ferrari have a plethora of options to replace him. Maybe we see Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen there, or Ollie Behrman at Ferrari. You never know, because the rumor with Max Verstappen is also moving at...
Sure.
Oh my word, that is its own little brewing machine going on there about where's Max Verstappen going to end up.
Yeah, and listen, it's the person with the biggest checkbook. That's as simple as it is. You have to have gazillions to get someone like Max Verstappen. Okay, let's look at this weekend. We've got a sprint weekend. There's a 65% chance of rain on Saturday. There's a 40% chance of rain on Sunday in Canada. It is known for inclement weather. However, that can change. So we don't know what really can happen there. It's more than likely on race day Sunday, if it's dry conditions, more than likely a two-stop strategy. And in my opinion, qualifying for the likes of Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, Isaac Hadjar, and Lewis Hamilton is critical, because if they cannot split the two Mercedes of Antonelli, Russell, Piastri and Norris, they're going to be just purely fighting for positions 5 and 6, and the Mercedes and McLaren, in my opinion, I think are the teams who are going to be right out front.
And that's exactly how I feel about it. I think that the fact that McLaren have been able to make such a significant jump from where they were 3-4 races ago to where they are now has been pretty significant, to be able to play in the same pool as the Mercedes and even the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. I think qualifying is going to be really important. I'm excited to see the first sprint race in Canada. We know, like I said earlier, it's not an easy circuit. The Wall of Champions has taken out many a driver. I remember, I think it was in 1999, it took out 4 drivers. That was the year I was born. It was Michael Schumacher was one of the drivers as well. And I specifically remember that incident because it was one of the wettest races I'd ever seen. If you go back in the memory books, in one of the wettest races, it was that, and the Wall of Champions had taken them out. And it's notorious for just being, incredibly, it's one of those tracks where you have to be aggressive but also be very meticulous about your racing. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how everyone's going to fare. Like we also said earlier, I do think this is the start of the next phase of the season. And if, we have a different race winner, that would be really exciting. If Kimi Antonelli wins again, I really think that he's probably going to go all the way if the pressure doesn't build up too much. But if Kimi Antonelli wins again, he's really has set the precedent for the title run this season. And I don't think he will expect that. I don't think he would have expected where he is now, but it makes it awfully exciting for what's going to come for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and I think all of a sudden the pressure now is on George Russell. The McLaren boys know that they're actually free. They've got to try and catch up in this race for the championship. So they need to go and do things. Whereas George Russell now is actually wanting to now dig in and claw points back from Antonelli. Antonelli can just sit there and say, well, it's okay. I'm happy with where I am. I've still got a lot to learn. But I think he's probably hopefully going there with a little less pressure. George Russell's the one who's going to be feeling the pressure this weekend. And as always, if Ferrari can find something in that qualifying pace with this less deployment and over clipping, this is a completely different circuit to Miami. So even though there are these slight changes, it still is going to have an effect on the lifting and coasting for the drivers. Hopefully not as bad as what we anticipate. But if we have proper qualifying like we had in Miami, watch out for Ferrari, watch out for Max, and then of course the rest behind them. And then, my dark horse, Aston Martin.